Well, time now to get a more detailed look at the Sunday papers for you. With me this morning to review them are anthropologist Mariana Hotter and entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle. So welcome back to you both. We dealt with lots of the front pages last hour, didn't we? A lot of them politics-centric and the pressures on Liz Truss as the Tory party conference starts after this week of terrible headlines and market turmoil. Kate, you picked out a story in The Observer which kind of relates to that, really, doesn't it? And the impact that's being felt by homeowners.
Well, yeah, because unless you're in a privileged position, unfortunately, those economic elements will affect your waking day in and day out. And that's why it's important to highlight all of the different challenges that many people are facing. This story talks about the fact that obviously we've seen this huge change over the last week since that mini budget in terms of the mortgage stakes has happened to renters too, that this particularly focuses on the house buyer market and highlights that 40% of products have been withdrawn. Now, there's been a lot of debate over various programming this week on social media. Some people still highlighting that they feel better rates of interest are still available. And there's a case study here in the column that you can see highlighted showing that what they've highlighted from a piece of research is that if you're a new buyer, you might be looking to pay maybe £80 more a month in terms of a like-for-like offer. And if you were remortgaging on a certain property type, you might be paying £1,800 a year more in terms of a like-for-like offer. The fact of the matter is that, better products will always be available if you have the means to be able to show that lender that you can afford it. And that means a massive deposit in some cases. It means a credit history that will be probably beyond fantastic. And most of the people are not in that scenario. And I hate this judgment. I hate this fact that we try and make it dirty, that somehow if you've worked hard and strive to do your best and you are being accepted for a mortgage, why would we pause on at that in any way? The fact of the matter is, for the economy to be good, we need more houses in the market, more affordable housing, and that's something that just seemed to not even be mentioned last week. The only thing was stamp duty, and stamp duty is something you pay at the end of the transaction, so you've already gone through that process right now. But if people can't get on the property ladder because the request for deposit is so challenging, and the fact they can't think that they can afford that, I mean, if you look at that new buyers example with a potential £80 more a month, that could be a massive part of the yes or no whether you can even do this now. So we have again hit another point with this mini budget that seems to have had a massive effect on how people live.
Well, yes, and lots of people waiting to see and wondering whether they can carry on paying their mortgage. They don't know how it's all going to settle down. So lots of questions. But the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, Marianne, are seeking to reassure this weekend, aren't they? There have been various articles. I know the Sunday Telegraph has got an interview with Liz Truss, and you've picked out an article in The Express as well, where the message really is, I'm sticking to my plan, believe me, stick with it. Ultimately, there will be growth and everyone will be better off. That's their message, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a kind of a call that she believes that the United Kingdom is the best country in the world and our best days are ahead of us. It's a real sort of call to arms, a rallying cry for the nation. She does admit, at least, that this week has been, quote, disruptive. Other people have chosen other words to describe this week. But she's saying, breaking from business as usual was always going to be difficult, but she's in it for the long term. She has the resolve to see this through in the best interests of the British people. One of the things that kind of really stood out for me in this kind of, I would call it an opinion piece, a kind of a laying out a platform for the Prime Minister. She says, by the end of next year, all the red tape dreamt up in Brussels will be gone, and that instead the government is going to regulate in a way which is pro-growth, pro-consumer and pro-business. Now, at first look, you think, okay, well, who would disagree with that? And the thing that concerns me is first, that we are still in this position where there's a bit of a dog whistle around the EU being the bad guys, that, we were tethered by all that red tape by Brussels, and now we're going to break free into this new libertarian kind of low regulation, low tax, pro-growth economy. But the thing that we have to remember, the thing we have to sort of disentangle and not actually buy into this polarising binary false debate is that some of that regulation that through the nature of the way our laws were being conducted, came through Brussels or was an EU directive. They're things like whether your drinking water is safe to drink, whether there is raw sewage on the beach next to your house, whether the air that your child is breathing as they walk to school will or will not harm their health, short-term and long-term. So we have to just remember that it's not bad to have regulation. Yes, no one wants onerous hoop jumping bureaucracy, but we really have to, sort of, as a public, just kind of go, hang on, Miss Truss. Let's actually, can you kindly treat us with a bit more respect and approach our intellect and give us details, because people don't necessarily want fracking next door. They don't necessarily want inappropriate property developments. Yes, they want affordable housing, but we have to do this in a way that actually safeguards our future and our children's future, as well as stimulates short-term and medium-term growth.
Okay, yeah. So I think people need the facts, need the details, don't they? And presumably the government will say that'll be coming out in time. Inside the Sunday Mirror, Kate, you've focused on an article which is all about tackling period poverty. Obviously, a lot of people are worried about the cost of living at the moment, but this particular angle is an interesting one, isn't it?
I'm so glad that I've been able to cover this morning. £146 a year. £146 is the average amount that a female will pay to afford period products. Now, that's an average. If you suffer, as I do, from something like endometriosis or one of the other challenges that creates more heavier bleeding, you could be looking double and beyond that. And this is a whole piece, an educational piece, an important piece. Please put this in front of everyone in your life so people understand this. There should be no embarrassment around this or stigma about this. And this is a call to action to support the campaign to put free products in toilets, in bathrooms and schools, because without those products we have young girls not attending school, not attending social activities, but it does go on from there. And I'm going to be brutally honest, when I started my career and I was doing a lot of work experience and not being paid for it and suffering from endometriosis, I had the embarrassment of using tea towel scraps that I was pulling together just to try and get through a week of my existence. It was embarrassing. I was bleeding out onto chairs, onto furniture, because I wasn't protected properly. And I'm saying this as a businesswoman that I completely understand that it's not the norm and we're not meant to talk about this. But if you can understand the embarrassment of that, then you will understand why this campaign is so important. We should have no one in this country that is without the products they need to get through and go on and achieve in their life. They shouldn't be withheld and pulled back from it. And if you are sorting things like that out, if you are stressed about that, it limits you, it limits your potential. I'm so sorry to hear that we're having to do this. I'm so grateful to people like Molly Fenton, a 17-year-old Cardiff schoolgirl who is making sure there are products in their toilets, but enough is enough. And if this is a case where retailers and manufacturers have to jump in again to get this sorted, then so be it. But we have to just move on from this by showing that everyone has what they need.
And not be squeamish to talk about it. Kate, thank you for telling us about that. That's been really tough for you, so appreciate you sharing it with us. Let's move on, Marianne, to what's going on in Iran next. This is quite extraordinary scenes that we're seeing in Iran, aren't we? Protests now following the death of a woman in custody.
Yeah, so Mahsa Amini was 22 years old. 2 weeks ago, she was arrested by the morality police in Tehran, the capital city of Iran, because she wasn't wearing her headscarf properly. And the next that her family knew was that she was dead. So she died in custody. The official report is that she had a heart attack with no prior health conditions at the age of 22. Other reports suggest that she was tortured and died in the course of that. But what's happened is that since then, there have been anti-government protests across Iran. They started off in Tehran, but now they're in lots of different university cities. They're internationally. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, as many people will know the name, she was protesting in London earlier, because this has morphed not just about women's rights and women's freedom to express themselves and wear hijab if they want to, but not be forced to under fear of arrest or perhaps even death or torture. But it's a broader campaign now, an anti-government campaign saying this is not the way that we want to live. And the government has tried to disrupt these protests and the organisers. They've disrupted the internet, they've limited social media, but people are coming out anyway and they're saying, we're going to organise anything. We did this in 1979.
We must leave it there. I'm so sorry, Marianne, we're out of time. So good to talk to you both. Nice to have your company. Thanks very much indeed.